Is Fox News trying to push the American economy into recession so that they can achieve their political goals? Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So the economy, we hear about how badly it's doing, right? Well, according to that group of left-wing radicals at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the economy isn't doing as poorly as you think. Now, there's no denying that people think the economy is doing badly, but in some respects, it's kind of head-scratching given the fact that unemployment is at an all-time low, the economy is growing, wages have been going up, and inflation now is actually slowing pretty substantially. So why are people so upset about the economy? Could it be that Fox News is doing everything it can to try to convince its viewers that things are going badly? There's some evidence for that, by the way. Polling shows that Republicans think the economy is doing much worse than Democrats do. So why is that? Well, check out this video over here, and you'll see how Fox News is trying to spin little bits of truth into a larger narrative that is pretty much completely false. Check it out.
For more on this wave of layoffs across the tech industry and really even beyond, let's bring in macro trends advisors, not micro.
Okay, layoffs across the tech industry and even beyond. Let's be clear what's going on here. There are a few large corporations within the tech industry, including Meta, which includes Facebook, obviously, Amazon, and Twitter, for obvious reasons, which are engaging in some layoffs. Microsoft also just announced that they're going to be doing some layoffs. So you might say, oh my God, all these layoffs all over the place. But it's worth bearing in mind that all of these companies engaged in massive binges of hiring during the COVID pandemic. Amazon saw its workforce grow dramatically as people were ordering online rather than going into stores. And in fact, these layoffs that they're doing barely scratch the surface of the total number of people who've been hired. So waves of layoffs? I don't think so. We've also heard, by the way, about how certain Wall Street firms like Goldman Sachs are going to be laying off people. They too, though, are going to be laying off people in this case because, yes, there are fewer big mergers and acquisitions deals going on. That's where they make their big money. But if you're upset about that, well, I don't know. The truth of the matter is that the economy is still doing extremely well with an unemployment rate that's very low. Wages have slowed a little bit, but they're still rising. And within the tech sector, that sector where these layoffs are occurring, the unemployment rate is just over 2%. In other words, these people who are being laid off will be snapped up very quickly. Finally, and just one more point that I want to address before we go into this, the research has shown a couple of things about layoffs. The first one is that layoffs don't work. When companies engage in them, they generally don't end up saving any money, especially in the long run, because in the long run, they're going to need the skills that these individuals have who were laid off. The second thing is, you might ask, why do companies engage in layoffs then? Well, the research has an answer to that too. And what it has to do with is herd mentality, where because Facebook and Microsoft and Amazon announced that they're doing layoffs, well, the other top companies think they have to do it too. Because one thing that should be shocking to all of us is that none of these companies are doing bad financially. And none of these companies expect to be doing bad financially anytime in the near future, with the possible exception, of course, of Twitter. In fact, there's a pretty strong argument that a big part of the reason that these companies are engaging in the layoffs is because they panicked and hired too many higher wage individuals rather than some lower wage individuals who they'd be able to train over time to move into those positions. So they're dealing with a situation of basically too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and they need to kind of realign things. So does this sound like something that's going to negatively impact the whole economy? Well, let's see what this guy has to say.
Trends advisors, founding partner, host of the No Po podcast, Mitch Russell. Sorry for botching that, Mitch. But we all know where you are and what you do, and we appreciate you being on with us this afternoon. I think the reality is, you well know, is that these layoffs are extending far beyond just the tech sector. Analysts
far beyond just the tech sector. Again, there's no evidence of that. And in fact, the recent layoff figures show that layoffs are actually at a low point right now. But that's where these headlines and this hysteria can be ginned up by Fox News. Let's keep watching.
They're talking now about this reality, or the looming reality. These big corporations are betting there's going to be a recession this year.
Right, and just in terms of recent headlines, Jillian, Goldman Sachs and some other big financial services firms have recently talked about layoffs in the midst of...
Yes, Goldman Sachs. Our heart bleeds for those bankers, doesn't it? Let's keep watching.
They're announcing their fourth quarter earnings. But if you step back a little bit, a recent survey done at the World Economic Forum by accounting firm PwC, then this is over 4,000 CEOs, said that 75% of them believe that there's an economic slowdown looming. Some went as far as saying recession, others just couched it as economic slowdown. So
economic slowdown can mean a lot of things. I think that given the incredible pace of hiring and the way that the economy really has been overheated as we've come out of this COVID recession, a slowdown can mean a lot of things. There's a fair amount of evidence for the argument that we could well be facing a soft landing, where yes, we have a bit of a slowdown, maybe unemployment ticks up a little bit, but generally most of us will be unaffected as the Fed achieves its goal of slowing down inflation, which again, there's already quite a bit of evidence that that's happening already. Let's keep watching.
I think what's happening is these companies are trying to get ahead of this. Normally, companies get very reactive. The economy slows down or their earnings fall, and then they start laying off people as a result. If anything, the last 2.5, 3 years has taught businesses to be incredibly resilient. They know that there's economic headwinds, and I think they're laying off workers to get ahead of it.
Again, what the research seems to show is that, number one, a couple of these companies overhired during the COVID pandemic, like Amazon, for example, and Meta. And number two, they had hired some of the wrong people, so they need to kind of reconfigure their workforce a little bit. And finally, that companies engage in layoffs because of psychological factors. They see other people doing it, so they want to join the herd. And if you don't believe that psychology impacts economics, well, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Let's keep watching.
Let's talk energy, Mitch. The Biden administration now is trying to, well, hoping to one day refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Yes, I'm glad we're talking about energy. This is another area where you see all kinds of misinformation on Fox News. So let's talk about that.
The crucial supply that historically helps to shield Americans from these global supply crises. According to energy experts now, though, and the Department of Energy itself, President Biden withdrew 220 million barrels back in 2022. He left it at a 39-year low. This is what he committed to the American people back in December. Listen.
Today, I'm announcing a plan to refill the Strategic Petroleum Oil Reserve in the years ahead at a profit for taxpayers. The United States government is going to purchase oil to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve when prices fall to $70 a barrel. So
we're a long way off from that $70 a barrel goal. WTI is trading at $79 a barrel right now. I don't know if we have this full screen from the Department of Energy, Mitch, but they just said this. They say DOE will only select bids for resupplying oil that is at a price that is a good deal for taxpayers. They then announced they are not moving forward with the plan to start repurchases in February. That's a pretty big blow to the Biden plan.
Now, I love how they say this, a pretty big blow to the Biden plan. That's not at all what President Biden said. In fact, the release is totally consistent with what the president announced. The president announced we'll start buying once price drops below $70. She said it's not below $70. Thus, we're not buying. Seems pretty consistent with what he was saying. What's more is he didn't say we're going to start buying immediately. He said we're going to be buying over the next couple of years. So again, this is where Fox News creates this doubt among people and makes it seem like there's some inconsistency in the administration when in fact they're absolutely consistent. Let's keep watching.
Right. So we're not filling the strategic, emphasis on the word strategic, petroleum reserve because we would do so potentially at a loss. And, you know, the break-even point or the profit point is $70 a barrel, and we're far from that. The actual profit was when we sold the barrels from the reserve, they were probably bought at about $40 a barrel by the previous administration. So it's going to be hard to fill up. And the one thing I would say about
Okay, that's a lie. The reason that liberal left-wing rag, the Wall Street Journal, pointed out that the administration made a lot of money for the taxpayers with their sales from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve had to do with the fact that the oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was sold at a price of $96.25 per barrel, when the price at the market was $74.29 a barrel. And that difference amounts to a $4 billion profit for the taxpayers. It has nothing to do with what the prior administration, or for that matter, multiple prior administrations, including the Obama administration, paid when they actually bought the oil in the first place. And given the fact that the price of oil was up above $100 a barrel not too long ago, the fact that it's at 79 right now seems like it's getting pretty close to 70. Finally, let me emphasize one fact about this. There are still 382 million barrels of petroleum still in the petroleum reserve. That means from the peak, the highest that it ever was, we still have more than half of the petroleum that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve has ever contained. So all this talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve being on its last legs is just false. Let's keep watching.
Oil very quickly, Jillian, is as China's economy begins to reopen, and it's certainly happening, and they are a big consumer of oil and oil products globally, that could drive the price of oil up further. So we may not see that magical $70 a barrel price for a while, which means when we do fill up that petroleum reserve, it's going to cost the taxpayers money, not earn them that profit.
So is having this depleted strategic reserve now just kind of...
yes, depleted. Still more than half full. Let's keep watching.
like the new normal for Americans? Do we just need to get used to that or what?
No, well, first of all, it's not strategic. Heaven forbid we have a real strategic need for it, not a political need for it. So I think it needs to be filled up. And I actually worry if we don't have enough domestic supply to fill it up, I worry where we would fill it up from. Are we just going to go to Iran and part of that deal with Iran?
Saudi
and ask
Arabia,
them for oil
Venezuela,
for
choose,
Saudi,
you know.
Right.
Only.
Yes, that's right. We don't have domestic capacity. This is another lie that you see repeatedly on Fox News. The United States actually is producing more energy than it had in the past. It's producing substantially more natural gas than it had in the past, at any point in the past. And the amount of oil that we're producing is increasing rapidly. Has it yet reached the height that it was back right before the COVID recession? No, but it's getting close. And in fact, the United States once again is a net energy exporter and a net oil exporter. We're producing more oil than we use here and exporting the rest. So all this talk about how we're not producing oil, oh, that's a lie too. So I really hope that when people hear this recession hysteria that you're constantly hearing on Fox News, that they actually consider some of the real facts, because most of them don't sustain this negative narrative you hear there. Well, if you want to see some more actual facts as opposed to alternative facts about the economy, check out this video over here where we compare the economic records of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.